Hoynesy, I got to be the most naive guy in the world. I thought that the only thing holding Major League Baseball from having a season this year was the approval of the doctors and the scientists and all that, and it turns out they have to get this silly contract going. Wouldn't you think cooler heads would prevail and say, let's just go with whatever we've got and worry about a contract next year, or am I totally naive about that?
Yeah, well, Les, you know the history between the owners and the players, and they're coming off as tone deaf, both sides. This is if you don't know what's going on in the country, you've had your head stuck in the sand, and you would think that they could reach a quick compromise, and people would be getting ready for spring training in June and the season in July. But that's not the way it works. Both of these sides are driven by money, and I think eventually a compromise will be reached, but not until it's absolutely necessary. They'll take this down right to the deadline, and then hopefully they'll settle. I think they will, but it's not going to be easy.
All right, so for morale of the country, I think we need baseball, we need basketball, we need football. Somebody's getting some bad advice on this thing here. You say they're going to play it out till the end, and I believe that because that's what they always do. But why don't they just play the games if the scientists and doctors tell us they can, and then worry about it in the off season? Go haggle it out and do whatever you want to do and mess it up that way. Why won't they do that?
Well, I think the players feel like they made a compromise on March 26th. After the season was delayed, they agreed. That if there was no season, they wouldn't get paid as long as they, were able to equal the service time they earned in 2019. And now the owners are coming, and then they said if there is a season, we take our salaries on a prorated basis depending on the number of games we played. Now the owners are coming back with another proposal, a 50-50 proposal to split the revenue. And the players feel like that's not only a salary cap, but they'll probably get paid less. So that's the crux of it. And I also think that I understand the players fear and trepidation about playing again. I think they're exposing themselves. The managers, the coaches, staff members, the players. The owners aren't. They're going to be up in the owner's box or maybe sitting in their man caves watching the games on TV like the rest of us.
They can sit in any seat they want.
So there is that, and I understand there is that. I think it's a legitimate concern.
Well, it doesn't take a math genius to figure out if you don't have fans in the stands, you're dealing with a different dollar figure than you were dealing when it was supposed to go on as normal. I mean, the players can't look at empty seats and say the teams are making a ton of money. I don't see how they can do that. I know the TV money is big, but it doesn't account for each team selling 2 million tickets a season, and then playing it that way. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they say most teams about 40% of their revenue is generated by attendance, concessions, parking, merchandise. And like you said, Les, with no fans in the stands, they, that money goes away. That money's not there. And I think, in those March 26th negotiations, there was a stipulation in there that they would revisit, the salary structure if, the games were going to be played with no fans. So, I think there was some nebulous language in there. And it's too bad both sides didn't hammer it out when they had a chance. And now it's the sticking point, it seems to be.
It just seems that, like what Blake Snell said today, and we'll go over that, but it seems that they're saying there's a risk, which there is, but there's a risk whether they got $10 million a year in a salary contract or $20 million. The risk is still going to be there. It's not going to be the risk won't be less for a marginal major league roster player as it is to a former Cy Young Award winner. The risk is the same.
Exactly. And everybody who steps on the field is, or in the clubhouse or whatever. If you're walking into the ballpark,
Yeah, the
you're
hotels.
taking that
Yeah.
gamble. And
All right, let's
so,
look, Hoynesy, let's look at the return to play proposal here and see what we're talking about here. For the 2020 season, this is the return to try to get back to play. 50-50 split of the revenue from the 2020 season, an 82-game schedule instead of 162, mid-June spring training and an early July opening day, and playoff field expands from 10 to 14 teams. Who would be against anything on that one, splitting it 50-50? It looks pretty fair to me on both sides.
right, and the players believe the 50-50 split is a form of a salary cap. They've struck over the salary cap, for time and time again. I think there's a fear that when the basic agreement ends after the 2021 season, that the owners would come back with that. Now, I don't know. These are extreme circumstances. You would think, okay, you could do this for a year, and then we go back and negotiate just like we always did for the same system we always had.
As a fan, Hoynesy, and a guy who's covered baseball since the early 80s, is there any part of you that can't wait to see a game with nobody in the stands? I mean, you did that covering the Indians at the Municipal Stadium.
Yeah,
So
I did that a lot.
right.
I did that a lot at the old stadium.
Yeah.
And in spring training, the crowds are
Right.
sparse, and if you go to a B game in the morning, there's nobody there in spring training.
Except the crack of the bat.
It will be interesting. I think it'll be. I think it'll be tough for the players. I was talking to Jordan Luplow about that, and he was, he was saying, like, for the first 10 or 15 games, you come back, you be excited, and but then when you start playing back-to-back games and you're maybe a doubleheader in there, and you're looking, you're tired, you're kind of sore, and you're looking for a shot of adrenaline from the crowd, and nobody's there.
Nobody's there.
I think that's kind of an interesting situation that the players are going to have to deal with.
I also want to. I'm a little curious about on the coverage of the games on television, if you'll be able to hear all the language that goes on the field.
Yeah, I know. We were talking to Tom Hamilton the other day on one of our podcasts on cleveland.com, and Hammy was worried about opening the windows during his broadcast, and having the umpires and the players and everybody else hear what he had to say. So that would be an interesting situation as well.
I can imagine
it would be fun. It would be fun to listen to what's going on the field.
I can imagine that, and then as soon as something is said, you could hear 20 guys saying, "No, that wasn't me. That was that guy who said it over there."